Welcome back to the channel, guys. I'm Yokai, your host, and today I have a pretty big one for you. This is going to be Gundam Part 8 for the Gundam Beginner's Guide. In Part 8, I will go over how to get your kit, what to do once you've acquired your kit, and also some of the instructions in the manual before we jump over to building them, which will be in Part 9. Also, real quick, I want to apologize for taking so long to get to this video and making it and then uploading it. This video had been kind of planned a long time ago, not too long after Part 7 came out. Unfortunately, I had things pop up, other videos I did first, and then I got sick, and then I had technical issues with my computer, so and I'm still having some of those technical issues. I figured out some ways around it, but it doesn't always turn out the best. But hey, sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. But I appreciate you sticking around or joining me this time. So let's get started. And obviously, if you're new, please hit the like and subscribe if you feel like I've earned it. And any other forms of interaction with the video, I appreciate as well. But if you are new and you're starting off with Part 8, you might want to watch the previous parts in this series. Now, some of them are pretty long, so I understand if you want to watch this first and then go back and watch those at some other time. They're all in their own playlist, so you can just watch them there if you want. But I strongly advise you watch the other videos first because it will give you a better idea of what's going on in this video. So, there you go. Next thing up is getting you a kit. And since you are a beginner, which is the whole point of this video, I would definitely suggest you get an easier and simpler kit. Like a SD kit, an entry grade kit, or a high grade. They're also the cheapest kits, so I definitely suggest you go this route so that you don't buy an overly expensive kit that's too complicated for your first one. You can if you want, but I really don't suggest it. And if you saw Part 7 about the tools, you can get kits from the same places that you can get your tools at, usually. But real quick, I will go over a few places or a few places in general to give you an idea of where you can go. Hobby or model stores will have, of course, the tools and will more than likely carry model kits. However, they won't always carry every type of kit because most model kits in this part of the world that are popular are going to be airplanes and mostly cars and like military hardware such as tanks. So, of course, you can go online and order there. The most common places that I order from that I will, go ahead and run through real quick in case you haven't seen my other video about online stores that are my favorites, would be Amazon and USA Gundam Store, and the best one, in my opinion, Canadian Gundam. Once you have received your kit, I'm assuming you ordered it online because it's the most common way to get stuff right now. Put your package up on a table or something similar like a desk or just up high. And look over your package to see if there might be any damage. So what looks like something went through the box or got pierced by like a forklift or something, or wet, like rain might have gotten to the box and damaged it that way. And of course, crushes or like where it looks like it's been pushed in and it's like bowing out or stuff like that. Just look for things that are obvious on the box, and if you do see any, when you open the box, which should be the next step, getting some kind of X-Acto blade or hobby knife or tape, but tape cutter, something along those lines, and cutting open the box and getting out your kit. Obviously, if you found anything on the outside or the package box, you might want to see if those damages had affected your actual box inside, the kit box. Now, most of the time, they're pretty good. They won't usually get damaged. But if they do, there's only a few things you can do. Um, which is you can either like try and get your money back, like send the package back. But because sometimes all that will happen to your kits is that you might have a loose part in like the plastic bag, and if that's the case, it's fine. You can just open it up, put that plastic part that came loose off to the side, and obviously when you get to its number and you go to cut it off the runner, but and especially if it's the only part that came off, then you're pretty good, and the part will just be there, and you'll immediately know, oh, I gotta get this because this is the part that came off of my runner, and now I can just put it on the kit. But if there's broken parts or things like that, uh, there's not really much you can do other than send it back and reorder it. Or if you have a 3D printer, maybe you can fix the damage. That's the thing that kind of sucks about this hobby is that sometimes stuff like that will occur. It's pretty rare, but the chance is still there. Now, the next setup part is that you want to get your tools and get a good place to build, such as a specific location for actually doing it, like a desk or a table that has a lot of clearing. That will help as well. And take out your stickers and any kind of decal sheets because you don't want to open those up and not realize that those are in there and then throw the plastic bags out and then now you don't have your stickers. Because unless you feel like painting everything, you're not going to have things that give details, so you don't want to throw those out. The next thing you want to do, real quick, is open up the plastic bags, take everything out, and if you can, you don't have to, but it definitely makes it easier, is take out all your runners and put them in alphabetical order around the area that you're building your kit. The reason why is because when you do this, it can make it easier to figure out where the next runner is. Because if you're, building it and it says you need A, B, C, and D parts from your runners, and you have them just kind of scattered all over the place, yeah, you'll find the runners eventually, but it will take a while to actually find all the runners. But if you have them in alphabetical order and they're all kind of spaced out around you, then it won't be nearly as bad, and you can just take them up, cut off the piece, and move on. We'll get more into depth with that, obviously, in the next video, but I just want to make sure you did that so that it's a little better. And real quick, if you expect to paint it or you plan to paint it, because of building some normal kits, like more traditional kits, you might want to put fill up a little bit, not a lot. You don't want a lot, but just enough to submerge all your runners. Fill up your kitchen sink, or especially if it's clean, with some water. lukewarm water. You don't want super hot and you don't want it to be cold. But some lukewarm water and put some soap in there and kind of submerge all your parts. Except for the ones that are soft plastic, I wouldn't recommend putting like the joints in there because more than likely you're not going to be painting the joints anyways. But still, any kind of soft plastic I wouldn't put in there. But all of the hard plastic parts that you're probably going to be painting, I put those in there because it does help. It gets off any kind of machine oils that you can't really see or like impurities that happen to get on the runners before they got put into their plastic baggies. And it also, if there is anything on there, like machine oils or anything, it can make it harder for paint to stick. So if you just clean all that off before you get to painting, then yeah, you'll have a better experience, and the paint will stick easier. Now, the next thing you probably are going to need to do is that once you have everything out, one of the last things that will still be in the box should be your instruction manual. Take this out, and at this time, I'm going to go through some of the things that are in there and kind of tell you what they are and what they mean, and the most important ones that you should know. So this is future me. I am sorry about this, but I forgot to mention something in this part of the video that I wanted to go ahead and just fix. So I removed that section of audio. But I just kind of recap everything and then add in what I was going to say. So when you first open the instructions, one thing that you will notice is that most of the time they are in Japanese. So all of the text, like all the informational text, is usually in Japanese. But that's easy because these are snap build kits, so all you really have to do is pay attention to the pictures and see what the instructions show you to do. But how do you know what to cut out? This is the part I forgot to mention. But when you are looking at the instructions, it will tell you which runner and which runner it is. So it will say A or B or whatever, and then the number part to cut out. So it will be like A12. So then you have to grab the A runner and then cut out a 12 or find the 12th part. I forgot to mention that, so I'm going to go ahead and put that here. But there are some other pictures that pop up in these instruction panels that sometimes might throw you for a loop. So I want to go ahead and go over them real fast with you. Remember, some of these are actually old and are pretty outdated and hardly ever pop up. But in case you ever get a kit that's pretty old, or you just want to test your chops on something older, especially after you've built a few kits, this is going to help with that, because sometimes, you keep building kits, you will eventually see stuff that you're unfamiliar with. So let me go ahead and go through these fast with you, and we'll move on from there. Now, first off, when you first open up your instructions, on the very first page, especially with a lot of the newer kits, but in general, on the very first page, you will usually see a kind of like a master page of all of the runners that should be in the box. This is how you know if you have your runners. So when you first get it and you open it up, make sure you look at this page and see if all the runners that you have are on this page. It will tell you what letter they are, which of course is what it stands for. So like you'll have runner A, runner B, etc. And this way you know. Now, of course, depending on what you get will determine what runners you will see. So if you see, what's on screen and it doesn't line up with what you see, don't freak out. Just know that that's okay. It's okay. Just know that whatever is in your instructions is what you need. So just keep that in mind. So, this next one, the first one's going to be what looks like a picture of like, almost kind of like a watercolor brush, but it's actually the brush that's at the bottom of, or the bottom of a cap on a liquid cement. And it's usually something that you only see in some of the oldest kits. So you will never really see this. Like 98.7% of all the Gundam kits that are ever been made are snap builds. So you really don't have to worry about ever seeing this, but in case you do, it just means apply glue. Now the next one looks like two arrows, usually in different colors, like white and black, pointing away from each other. And this means part to be attached to opposite sides. So say you have two legs and you're supposed to cut off B9 and put it on one side of each leg. So that's basically what it's telling you. Like, for the right leg, cut off B9 and put it on the outside of the leg. And then for the left leg, you do the same thing. You cut off B9 and you put it on the other side of the leg. It's kind of confusing, but when you actually do it, you'll understand it a little more. The next one will look like a two arrows pointing towards a rectangular object. This one is use identical part for each side. So say you only have one leg, and it tells you to cut off, B9, but this time you put B9 on the right and left side of the same leg, if that makes sense. So instead of doing it on the opposite leg, you do it on the same leg, and then you're going to do the same thing on the other side, more than likely. And that's usually that's usually the kind of stuff that you'll have to do when you see this. But you'll usually explain it a little, you'll go more in depth in the pictures and you'll see it better. But that's what this particular image means. Now, one that you will see that's actually pretty common, which looks like two arrows that are kind of moving down in the picture, which pretty much means that it means move the other side as well. So basically what it's telling you is that you need to move apart or like slide apart on the kit and then do it to the other side. So say it's telling you to move apart on the arm, you want to slide it on both arms or move it out of the way on both arms. That way you can do another part of the build and this won't get in the way. It's a little bit more common on like higher quality kits like real grades or master grades, but you will see this occasionally on high grades. So just keep that in mind that this one's a little bit more common, but it's just basically telling you to kind of move or slide something out of the way. If you see one that looks like a nipper or a clipper that you have to cut off the plastic pieces, that's literally what it's telling you. It's just telling you to cut this piece off. Because, sometimes, especially with lower quality kits, they're usually, they usually have people who are building it who are inexperienced, more than likely kids. And sometimes kids will just pull them off the runners, and for some of these models, that's okay. But for the most part, even on some of those like SDs and stuff that are meant for kids to pull off the runners, you might still want to go ahead and just clip them. But this is again an older mark that you won't really see too often because they assume that you're using clippers the entire time. But once in a blue moon you might see this. So that's all it means, is just use clippers. Pretty self-explanatory. The next one you might see will show what looks like a screw or a screwdriver, and sometimes it will show the same picture but with like an exclamation point. And all that means is either basically use a screwdriver here and screw in a screw, which again is something you will hardly ever have to do. It's a very rare one. This is one that's either for really high level kits like master grades or perfect grades, and also for older kits as well, like 90s kits or like early 2000s are more common with these. So you'll probably hardly ever see these. But just in case, that's what that means. And if you see the one that has the exclamation point, it's just telling you beware and don't over tighten the screw, because if you do, you could crack the plastic. So that's all it's telling you. Now, another image that you might see, and this one's pretty common, it looks like a white circle eating a black circle, and the black circle's smaller. And basically, what it's telling you is assemble this section first. And it took me a while to kind of figure out what it means, but basically, the black part is actually the part that you want to build first, and it's usually associated with the panel. So you'll see in some instructions, you'll see what looks like a panel and then a sub panel. And in that sub panel, it's telling you to build something. And usually, what it's telling you is to build a like internal frame part and put that in between two armor pieces, and then you have to put that inside of something else on the main panel. And that's basically what it's telling you is build this first so that when you get to this step, it goes smoothly and you don't mess anything up. Um, it's kind of hard to explain, but when you see it and you do it, it will start to make more sense. And sometimes even I still mess up on this because I just don't notice the picture, or it's just I just got confused. It sometimes happens to an experienced person such as myself. So if you mess up, it's not a big deal. Just do your best to be careful and open it up and then get to where you need to get to. But yeah, to avoid it, I'm trying to tell you what it means. It just means do this part first before you move on to the main panel. That's what it means. Now, one that you will see on occasion, it's not as common, but you will still see it from time to time, is basically the same thing, but in reverse. So now you have a black circle, which is eating a white circle. And, of course, the way they are positioned is basically where the panel is. So, if you see, like in this picture, you'll see a white circle on the left side, and the big black circle is, like, in the middle. This is telling you that, in the instructions, the white circle is actually going to be on that side. So, down to the lower left. And the same thing goes for the other image you saw earlier. However, in this one, instead of it being build this part first, it's actually telling you to build this part later. So in this case, the black section of the circle is to tell you you actually don't need to build this part first. You need to build it after you build the part that's in the smaller panel section. This is usually because sometimes this might be a frame part, but it goes over an armor piece or something. It's kind of strange, but you'll experience more of this, of course, the more you build. And this one, again, like I said, is not super common. It's like in between common and rare. It happens on occasion, but it's not too common. Usually the other one is more common than this one. But it will pop up from time to time, depending on the kit you get and stuff like that. But just know that that's basically what it means. It just means build this part later. Now another one it's not super common unless you're building something like a master grade or perfect grade. And it will sometimes show up in, actually it shows up a lot in real grades. But with high grades or the early, simpler kits that most of you should be building at this moment, you might see on occasion something that looks like an image of an arrow that's turning around, and it will have some sort of number above it, like 180 or 720 or something. And basically, it's just telling you to rotate it as as indicated. So basically, it's just telling you turn this part 180 degrees, which means turn it halfway around. So go from the starting position to halfway on the other side, and that's where it should be. Again, you'll see this more commonly with suits that have full inner frames. You won't really see this too often on like high grades or anything like that, but once in a while it will show up. So just keep that in mind, that this is not super common, but it is common enough to where you will still occasionally see it on a high grade and stuff. So just keep it in mind. you will pop up, but just do it. Just do what it tells you to do. Like when it tells you to turn. If it tells you to turn it 90 degrees, you just turn it 90 degrees. Um, it tells you 180 degrees, you just turn it 180 degrees. It's not too hard. Just make sure that you don't knock it or bump it while you're still building other stuff, because sometimes it will move the part from where it should be. So just be careful with it. And that's basically all you need to know for this one. Now this one's very, very important, but again is actually still pretty rare, and you won't see it too often. But once in a while, you'll see what looks like an exclamation point, and it's basically telling you when attaching these parts, pay attention to its direction. This is usually because there's a certain way that these parts should fit, and even though sometimes they can still fit in other directions, they shouldn't fit that way together, and it's going to be really hard or impossible to separate them. So you really, really need to pay attention to when you see an exclamation point, and pay attention to the picture a lot. Be very mindful of what you're seeing in the picture. Especially if there's tick marks, but I'll go over that in a second once I go through all the pictures. The next one is one that's very, very common, and it will look like a circle and then a triangle that's separated by like a line. And this one is pretty common, and you will see it in just about, I'd say about 60 to 70% of the kits that you build. But basically, it's telling you select one of the parts and attach it. Now, this is usually for kits that have optional parts. So sometimes a kit will have multiple versions that you can build in that one kit, but you will usually only have enough to build the kit once. So you have two different versions of the same suit in the model kit box that you can build, but you have to choose which one you want. And that's basically what it means. Is just choose the parts that you want in this moment to put on. And you will usually see both sets of instructions on the same panel, just in case you choose one or choose the other. Now the next one is pretty self-explanatory. It will look like someone dog-earing a piece of paper, or like bending a piece of paper. It's actually showing you a sticker coming up. And then, of course, if you see a number, or if you see what looks like a Japanese character in a small circle next to that picture in the instructions, it's telling you to find the sticker sheet, pull off that symbol or that number. Sometimes they're numbered and sometimes they're symbols. They're usually symbols, though, so you kind of have to really pay attention to that, because some Japanese symbols can look very similar to others. So you really need to pay attention to that. But it's still pretty simple. Just find the picture, pull off the sticker that goes to that part, put it on the part where it tells you to put it on, and then just move on to the next step. Usually pretty quick, pretty easy. Sometimes the stickers aren't the best, and if you want, you can just ignore these and use paints or something. But if you're a beginner, more than likely you're not going to be painting. You're going to be doing a straight build, which I do suggest that's how you start. So just, ignore them, or go ahead and do the stickers. It's up to you. Now, on occasion, you will see a picture that looks like a paintbrush, and that's pretty much what it's telling you, is that you need to paint this. This is super rare, and you hardly ever see it unless it's on a much, much older kit, or like a really high level kit, like a master grade or perfect grade. Even then, though, it's pretty rare. So it hardly ever shows up, because you don't really have to paint these kits unless you want to. But once in a very, very, very blue moon, well, you'll see a paintbrush that's telling you to paint. So it's rare, but it will show up once in a very, very rare moment. Another image you may see is sometimes you will see something that looks like glue, like a glue bottle or a glue brush or like a paintbrush or like uh, clippers or something that will have a no symbol on top of it. And basically, what they're telling you is not to paint it, not to glue it, and not to cut it. This again is very, very rare and only seems to happen on higher graded kits because sometimes they will have things that look like they should be cut off of a part, but they're telling you not to cut it because it's a part of the piece. Stuff like that. So just be aware that sometimes, once in a while, you will see pictures that will tell you not to do something. It's pretty rare, but it happens once in a while. The next one will look like a multiplication number, and that's actually what it is. It will usually go up. The most common one you'll see is times 2, but it can go upwards of like 8 to 12. This, of course, depends on what you get. Usually, higher quality kits like master grades and perfect grades are the ones that will have higher numbers. The most common one, though, you'll see is 2 up to 4 for high grades. But basically, it's just telling you what to do. So, like, if the construction for both arms are exactly the same, then sometimes it will just say, do this twice. So you do the exact same instructions, but you just do them again. That's it. Pretty self-explanatory. Obviously, you'll see this more commonly with suits that have weapons that are exactly the same, like 4 Gatling guns or something. If it has like that many Gatling guns or that many like daggers or something, it's basically just telling you to do the exact same construction again. So just do it again. That's it, and then move on to the next instruction. Pretty simple. And finally, the last sticker or the last image you'll see, it looks kind of like someone's like putting a pen to a piece of paper. What it's supposed to represent is actually tweezers going to go pull off a decal. Now, this image looks a little different and more modern kits, but it's basically the same thing. It just means pull off a decal from the decal sheet, not a sticker. There is a difference, and I'll go over it in part 9. But basically, take the decal off and put it on the kit. That's all it means. And you'll usually have a number or a letter or a Japanese character associated with that decal, just like you do with stickers. So we'll go over that in part 9. Just know that it will pop up, especially on higher quality kits like real grades, master grades, perfect grades. They have a lot more decals. High grades sometimes have decals, but sometimes they don't have any at all. So it just depends on which one you get. That's basically it. So that's the pretty much all the like extra symbols that are going to be inside of the panels that you need to know. Some of them you'll never see, some of them you will rarely see, and some of them you'll see all the time. So I tried to tell you which ones were common and which ones were not, but I think I missed a few. But yeah, it's just that's basically the gist of these symbols. And the last thing that you need to know in your instruction manual before you start building, which will mean this is pretty much the end of the video, we'll be moving on to part 9 after this, is tick marks. Now, tick marks look kind of like quote marks, but they look like they're on top of one of your pieces or they'll be next to one of your pieces. And usually what that means is just this side needs to be up, or this side needs to be in the direction that they're showing you in the instructions. Because, like I said, it usually means that this part can fit here in different ways, but it's not supposed to. And if you put it in a different way it's not supposed to fit, it might either be too hard to remove to fix, impossible to remove to fix, or will make it really difficult to finish the build. So pay attention to these tick marks and put them exactly the way they show them in the instructions. These are very important. So don't ignore these tick marks. Alright, so that's going to be the end of the video, guys. I hope you liked it, and I hope it was informative. So, like, subscribe if you haven't already, and if you're new to the channel, and also hit that notification bell. And of course, leave a comment and tell me what you liked about the video, tell me what you didn't like about the video, and if you have any other questions, put it down below. Obviously, there is going to be a few more parts to this series. Part 9 is going to be coming out, and I will be going over more things. There are some things I didn't talk about here because I felt like it would have just fit better in Part 9 while I'm showing you how to actually build them. So, come back, hopefully sometime in the near future for Part 9. Thank you, and this is Yokai, and I'm signing out. Have a good day, everybody.